Hi, sorry, didn't realize I was muted. Thank you. Hi, it's Rocket Wednesday. I am not Annie. I am here to fill in, but apparently my brain did not come with me. Annie is taking a much-deserved day off, and I am here to fill in. Now, before we get started, I want to warn you. Just as Annie says she only knows enough about astronomy to be dangerous, well, I only know enough about rockets to be dangerous. So we're going to do the best we can, and, well, we'll see how it goes. So, getting back to the rockets. Hello and welcome to the Daily Space for today, Wednesday, February 26th, 2020. I am your host for today, Dr. Pamela Gay, and I am here to put science in your brain. Our first launch of the week was in China. Amid the COVID-19 epidemic, a long Mach 2D rocket took off carrying the XJS-CF mission on Wednesday, February 19th at 9:07 p.m. UTC. This launch took place at the Xichang Space Center in southwestern China and is interesting for a couple of reasons. For one, this launch center doesn't usually perform launches of this particular rocket type. It primarily handles launches of the Long Mach 3. Normally, the Long Mach 2s fly from either Taotian-An or from the Taiyuan space centers, both in northern China. This is the first space launch for China since the recent coronavirus outbreak became worldwide news. Most of China's various space facilities have taken a number of precautionary measures to limit the spread of the disease, such as employing body temperature monitors and requiring everyone to wear face masks. As is often the case, there's not a lot of other information about this launch. What we do know is that 4 technology demonstration satellites were carried into low Earth orbit. While not much is known about the specific operations of these spacecraft, CASC reports that they will mainly focus on testing new Earth observation technologies, as well as inter-satellite communications between the members of the constellation. Warning: rocket launches are loud, and I need to double check my audio settings. Pardon me while I lean. There's going to be a great deal of leaning. Hold on, I'm adding the audio in. And it's just at the edge of what I can easily read. All right, so warning, rocket launches are loud when they play. There we go. Whoa, are you going? No. Well, they're loud, but I failed to get you the audio. Let me see if I can fix that. That's so deeply confusing. Oh. There you go. So let's watch that again. This isn't the greatest quality launch footage, but it shows the command room and the workers inside. They're all wearing masks to conform with disease prevention standards. Annie felt that it was important to share the human side of this particular rocket launch. Because China launches from an island rather than because China launches inland rather than from the coastline, debris fell on land. Guizhou Radio and Television reported no major casualties or property damage, and that the recovery process was successful. Next up, on Thursday, February 20th at 8:25 UTC, the Russian military launched a Soyuz 2 with the Meridian-M 19L satellite. At first glance, it looks like this mission went completely normally, but that's not the case. This launch was originally scheduled for January 24th, but during pre-flight checks, it was discovered that the Soyuz third stage, the upper of the two center core stages, had an electrical problem. After inspections, technicians decided to replace the third stage entirely, rather than try and repair the one in the place. That meant rolling the rocket back to the assembly building, unstacking all the parts, then bringing the new third stage in and putting it all back together again. This, combined with the launch windows available for the spacecraft's intended orbit, delayed launch by almost a month. The Soyuz 2-1A rocket with a frigate upper stage and the new third stage finally took off from the Russian military's Plesk Cosmodrome, located about 800 kilometers or 550 miles north of Moscow. The launch successfully put the spacecraft into the highly elliptical, highly inclined orbit. I'll talk more about that orbit in a second. The satellite launched last Thursday was the second of an upgraded batch of the Meridian-Ms, the first of which was launched back in 2018. They're designed to work within the Russian military's Integrated Satellite Communications System, or ISCS, which provides uplink and downlink support services and satellite tracking and control via Roundup and Globus satellites in geosynchronous orbit. A total of 9 Meridian satellites have been launched since 2006. 7 have apparently been successful, while 1 was deployed into the wrong orbit in 2009, and another was lost during launch failure in 2011. Space is hard, people. Space is hard. In any case, the new satellite is part of a system that will help allow, among other things, broad, persistent coverage of high Arctic areas. The Russian military suggested that among other possible missions, Arctic ice reconnaissance planes communicating voice and survey data back to distant ground stations could be done via this satellite network. Okay, on to that odd orbit. Normally, when we cover satellite launches, the satellites involved are put into mostly circular orbits. The ISS, Starlink, and GPS satellites are all placed in circular or near circular orbits to accomplish their missions. However, the Meridian satellites are placed in a Molniya orbit, which is highly elliptical and highly inclined. And here, when we say elliptical, we don't mean a tiny bit egg-shaped. We're straight into severely stretched territory, with altitudes ranging from 600 to nearly 40,000 kilometers above Earth. Take that long oval of an orbit and place it at a 63-degree angle relative to Earth's equator, and you get the highly inclined orbit. But why would you even do this to a satellite? Well, thanks to orbital mechanics, a Molniya orbit is uniquely suited to providing useful satellite coverage for Earth observation and communication services in the Arctic regions, and these are needed by ground terminals. These areas are not easily serviceable from satellites in the typical geosynchronous orbits over the equator because any antennae you'd be using would be pointed at such a low angle that any small hill could easily block the path of the signal. And even though polar orbiting satellites can see these same latitudes, they only have coverage for a given spot for a few minutes at a time. The Molniya orbit is inclined in such a way that the desired areas not only are clearly visible, but the satellite is able to somewhat pause at its highest point thanks to orbital mechanics. This allows hours of uninterrupted coverage that low Earth orbit and geosynchronous satellites simply can't match. So again, warning, rocket launches are loud. And I went the wrong direction.
Докладываю. Точное время старта. 13 часов 49 минут 1 секунда. Доклад закончен.
I loved that we got to see the dude talking on the phone. That was kind of amusing. All right. So, to wrap things up, here's a running tally of a few spaceflight statistics for the year. So far, only one toilet has burned up in the atmosphere. There are 245 new satellites in orbit, with 231 of those launched by 16 rockets. By spaceport, here's the breakdown of these rocket launches. USA, 5, China, 3, French Guiana, 2, New Zealand, 1, Russia, 1, Japan, 1, Kazakhstan, 1, Iran, 1. Your useless space fact for the week comes from RefSmat, who shared that all payloads carried by the space shuttle had to be balanced by carrying lots of lead ballast into orbit and bringing it back down again. That lead ballast served no other purpose. Okay, that rounds out our show for today. Thank you all for being here. This has been the Daily Space. I am your host, Dr. Pamela Gay. This episode was written by Annie Wilson, working hard with volunteer Dave Ballard, for whom we are so grateful because this wouldn't be possible without him. This episode is produced by Susie Murph. And we are, as always, a product of the Planetary Science Institute, a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to exploring our solar system and beyond. We are here thanks to you. We're here thanks to your bits, your subs, and your patronage at patreon.com/CosmoQuestX. We're able to pay Susie and Annie only because of you. Thank you so much for all that you give. And if you'd like to know what the best way to support us is, well, I'm going to point you at that Patreon link. We are able to give you more and hope that you will keep supporting us into the future. Thank you, and I will now hang around and attempt to answer your questions. But again, I only know enough about rockets to be dangerous. All right, let's see what we have in the chat. Scrolling up. All right. There's discussion of pizza. And again, I'm so sorry about being muted. Thank you for the letting me know. Thank you. Some days, people, some days. Well, there was a, Trillian goes, oh no space toilet update. There was a space toilet update. Annie provided it for me. Annie is a good human. I like that. Flamey end down, pointy end up. Easy. It's a little more complicated than that. Let's see what else is in here. So Hanny's Vorverb asks, is any of the stuff a rocket made of profitable if recovered? Well, you can recycle the materials, and there's actually a market for collectible space items. So depending on what it is, it may be more profitable to recycle the materials because a lot of, well, metals are used in making rockets. And for the other stuff, well, chop it up into little pieces and sell it on eBay. Let's see. Veronica asks, are these the ones that cause iridium flares? No, iridium flares come from iridium satellites that I don't think are still being launched. If you're referring to the Molniya orbit, these particular orbits get really close to the Earth on the opposite side of the planet from where they're being used as a communication satellite. And they zip past that part in their orbit. And they linger slowly out as they pass over the pole where they're doing their intended work. This allows them to have essentially geosynchronous speeds, but not quite. They are still moving. And linger for hours at a time over a given area before racing away. If you have a constellation of Molniya satellites, you can maintain continuous coverage without needing a constellation for long periods of time. You're right, Molniya. I called it small instead of what it is. Molniya is small. I goofed. Let's see, whatever. Yeah, the rocket launches did not want to be loud. I think I have volume set to protect your eardrums somewhere. So Henny asks, why doesn't SpaceX use this orbit to give internet to certain specified areas? It sounds like it would require less satellites. Because the kinds of satellites that they're using for these orbits don't have the high speed, low power that you want for home internet. So when you have a satellite truck or a news truck or even a big satellite radio, those require significant power to be able to communicate to something at such a high orbit. You also have something that's further away, so the light travel time is longer. This is why so many interviews with reporters in the field in other nations have that really weird, I'm coming to you from Africa, John. And John's like, hello, how are you doing? And there's this pause. I'm fine, John. How are you? Thank you. You look, that pause is the actual amount of time it takes for the light to travel up, get processed, and come back down. If you stick satellites in a significantly lower orbit, you don't have that lag. So it's a trade-off on energy, time, and the idea is, while those high up satellites are really useful for news and communications where you're not as worried about the size of the battery or the lag. For day-to-day internet and things like that, we want to have lower power devices, which means putting the satellites in lower orbit. Let's see what else is in here. Veronica Cure asks, why not take water instead of lead and you can make it rain? I'm not even going to address that question. There is... I'm going to assume that is sarcasm. Yeah. Water sloshes. Okay, I'm going to address that question. Water sloshes. You want things that you can put in one place and they're not going to leak, they're not going to drain, they're not going to slosh. Sloshing is difficult to balance. Yeah. Aractifus asks, can we make it rain? Yes, but not that way. You can seed clouds with, I forget exactly what molecule it is, but there's a kind of powder that you can seed clouds with that will cause them to more effectively build up moisture and trigger rain. Let's see. Lasers, pew, pew. Gamers need them in low Earth orbit. Thank you, Broken Symmetry. Let me get the Doug cam up. All three Dougs stood. Can you sit? Malachi, sit. Malachi, sit. Sit. Come on, you can sit. I know I dropped a piece. Okay, fine. There you go. Happy dogs. Mine don't steal souls as effectively as Annie's, I'm afraid. Hanny Vorverp says, I always wondered how they handled fuel sloshing in space. Do they always have some wasted fuel? They mostly use solid fuels or things that are under high pressure, so gases. These are things that don't slosh. Yeah. Silver iodine. That's right. That's what you seed clouds with to make it rain. All right. Do we have other questions out there? Also, baffles and things that do slash. This is true. Baffles are basically projections into the fluid that slow its motion, damp its motion. Wow. Arctiphus, I didn't know about Ullage engines and the Ullage maneuver that you're mentioning about. I'll have to read about that. Again, I don't know everything about rockets. Only enough to answer random questions. Very random. Any other questions from all of you? I'm throwing bits one at a time, mostly because I'm enjoying it. Waffles! Who wants a waffle? I may have waffles for lunch. That may be a thing. All right, good humans. I need to know who to raid. I always end up raiding like the same 4 humans. So I'm going to work on pulling up the credits, and I'm going to say, if you have anyone you think I should raid, tell me in the chat. But for now, once again, I want to remind you, I have been your host. I am Dr. Pamela Gay. This episode was written by Annie Wilson and Dave Ballard. This episode will be produced by Susie Murph, and we are a product of the Planetary Science Institute, a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to exploring our solar system and beyond. We're here thanks to the generous contributions of people like you, and we can only continue to be here with your continued support. If you'd like to know how to best help us, well, check us out at patreon.com/CosmoQuestX. Our goal is to make it so that no unpaid work goes into the production of this show, and we can only get there with your help. So please consider giving if you can, and if you can't, that's okay. Leave us a review wherever you get podcasts. Thanks, and wherever you are in the world, have a fabulous morning, evening, or afternoon, and I'll see you on the other side. Bye-bye.